everybody. Happy Monday, and welcome to the PHLY Sixers Show, presented by Rothman Orthopedics. I am not Devon Givens. My name is Rich Hoffman. Kyle Newbeck, who is usually
what?
here.
You're not Devon Givens?
I know. So apparently we had some flight issues coming.
Boy, did we.
Look, man, that's Las Vegas. You know, that happens. So it's me driving today. Kyle did make it back. Good for Kyle. He got the Uber, a clutch Uber driver got him on his flight.
Mario Andretti in the Uber. And you guys know we don't do free promo on this show. TSA pre-check saved my life. What an absolute godsend that was. Or I would probably be at home asleep or on a plane because I didn't make that initial flight. So thank you to the good folks at the TSA.
It really is one of life's underrated joys that when you are late for a plane or there's bad traffic or you think you are going to miss the plane and you get it at the end, like when you sit down on that plane, it is an underrated great moment.
I think it was the single greatest airport performance of my career, all things considered. The crazy packing job that was done at the last moment. I was in flip-flops too, so it wasn't even like, because I was like, I don't have time for socks. It was every decision was, how do I cut 5 to 10 seconds off of my time to make it in time?
And when you sat down on that
and
plane,
here we are. So I can tell you stories about Vegas and Daryl Morey and everything else.
We'll sign that guy up for the next F1 event in Las Vegas. It seems like he knows the streets pretty well. Okay, let's talk about, Kyle, you were in Las Vegas for, what was it, about 3.5 days? You saw some bad Sixers basketball.
Very unfortunate, yeah.
Unfortunately, VJ, by the way, what's going on with VJ? Because Daryl apparently said that he hurt his wrist. It starts as a thumb sprain, a thumb contusion. Now it's a wrist injury. Kyle, it's like, can you just be normal?
Keeping the messaging straight would be, that would be nice at a minimum.
It's like, look, I would love for VJ to play in these games because it would make them 10,000% more watchable.
Yes.
But it doesn't matter. It's basketball that does not actually count on your record at the end of the year. Can we just get the injury right? Come on.
So my read on it, and this is more speculation than it is reporting. So please take it in that sense. I think this is as simple as VJ's agent is probably like, he doesn't need to be out there with any kind of injury at all. And if you look around the league, right, like the whole league is putting these guys in bubble wrap, right? Yeah. Ace Bailey has not played yet in Las Vegas Summer League. I believe he's got a hip flexor issue he's dealing with. Con Knipple had a poor first game, and then he sits out the second half of their back-to-back. It sounds like Cooper Flagg is going to be done for the rest of Summer League, according to our friends at DLLS. So VJ came out of the gate super strong, had a great game out in Utah, and we asked him out in Las Vegas. He doesn't even know where he suffered this injury, right? Like so, and in fact, somebody asked him,
who can say,
was it on one of the dunks? And he goes, "No, man, I don't dunk on my left hand." So there was no traceable or definable moment that VJ looked back on and said, "This is where it happened." So I said over the weekend, it's so obvious to me that all signs point to he's fine because he's going through layup lines and shooting things with teammates and dapping guys with his left. He's making 2-hand catches for catch and shoot drill. So like, it can't be that hurt. And so I would say no panic button is being hit over here.
And
famous last words, of course.
And by the way, like if they are holding him out for most of the summer league, I think that's okay. I think that there is something to be gained from these games.
100%.
And you mentioned, did he give an indication that he might play this week?
So one, I know he wants to play, and who is holding him back is, I guess, up for the audience to determine or decide who they want to believe. I have heard that I think there's a chance that he's going to return and play, but that's easy to say. And I think if you've already held him out of a couple games, it's easy enough to just be like, yeah, you know what? We'll just take a closer look at Judah Mintz and Janai Broom and
Well,
Dembona and some of these other guys.
no
And
offense to those guys. I would like to see them
slightly less
playing
interesting.
playing with VJ.
Yeah.
You mentioned it as well. I actually had a weird thing where maybe I'm just trying to follow VJ's lead. I had a thumb sprain playing hoops last week as well. And you mentioned, I saw the video I think you took of, and this was shoot around probably like 4 or 5 days ago at this
Yeah.
point. Like he's catching the ball. That's the one thing when you have a thumb sprain that
You don't want
hurts.
to, yeah.
That hurt. The catching is easily the hardest part. And it seemed like he was doing that pretty easily. So whatever. If they're holding him out, I just like, can we keep a little consistency with the message? But hey, that's something that they can't. We've seen it time and time again, and this is lower stakes than it has been. Okay, so Daryl Morey, he had a conversation with the media.
He did.
Where, the Philadelphia media got to ask about a lot of the offseason stuff. It seems like most of the Sixers offseason work is done, except for Quentin Grimes, and that's, they could be in a little bit of a holding pattern. I guess, like, just from hearing Daryl Morey talk, because there are 3 or 4 things we have on the docket here, what's the first thing that stood out to you?
I think the main thing is my sense is this Quentin Grimes situation is just not going away anytime soon. Like I think there is a gap between where the Sixers probably want to get him at in terms of the contract structure and where Grimes and his representation probably feel he's worth, or at least that they're willing to ask for. Daryl did bring up that the other restricted free agents are sort of in the same boat, right? So
Who's
at
that?
least the notable guys.
That's Giddey. That's
Jonathan
Kuminga.
Kuminga. I believe Cam Thomas is also restricted
Okay.
free. Now he maybe not
Slightly
in the
lower
same
level,
the great Cambino. Well, that's actually sorry, that's another Cam.
That's a different
That's Cam Reddish. Cam Thomas, not as high priority as these other guys, but restricted free agency has been held up in general. I think a lot of people were waiting to see. I think Kuminga is viewed as maybe the first domino with these guys. It does seem like it's most likely he ends up with Golden State again, and then maybe they look for a trade partner at the deadline. But setting aside even what Morey said, and he was pretty brief talking about Quentin, when I asked around, you run into lots of people out in Las Vegas, and the general sense is just like Quentin Grimes is asking for a lot of money, and there is no money to be had.
None.
Right? Like the Sixers can pay him a good amount of money, but they're not incentivized to be like, hey, we're just going to give you a way more than we think you're worth out of the goodness of our hearts, because free agency dried up very quickly. So I have been saying on the show over and over, like, I think there is a valuation gap right now between the team and Grimes and his camp. And I just think that's going to have to play out over time, right? Obviously, on a smaller scale, we've seen this happen with Kelly Oubre a couple years ago. The reason the Sixers were able to get him in here as a free agent is because I think he thought he was going to get more money in free agency when his representation early in that period said, this is what's out there, and he turns it down. Then the money just, like, teams move on to other options. And so Kelly ends up in, what was it, September, I believe he signed his first year.
Yep.
So he ends up on a minimum deal that I don't think he was willing to take. Now, that is not going to happen here, right?
No.
Like Quentin Grimes is going to get, if he's getting anything, it'll be some kind of multi-year, fairly sizable deal. But nobody around the league seems to think that this is moving quickly. So I think we're going to be stuck in this, call it limbo, for a while. And that has impacted all their other business. It's just, until this is settled, there's nothing else to really do.
And I want to get to the Yabusele part of that in a sec, but let's stick on Grimes for a second here. Like you said, I mean, at the beginning of this free agency period, who did we have? We had the Nets hanging out there. The Spurs were out there.
Detroit
Detroit could have got there. Of course, they actually go get Duncan Robinson. That vaporizes a lot of their cap space. At this point, the Sixers, they are not incentivized to give any more than that mid-level exception. Now, I'm sure there probably is a negotiating. There's probably some wiggle room. It's not like they need to give him $15 million. They could probably bump that up a couple million per year. But, I know that Grimes, probably his agent, floated $25 million, and it's just like, that's not happening. That's not.
There's just no way to get there. Right?
You can't get there. They're not incentivized. They don't have to give that. The league doesn't have that. This is probably like a worst case scenario in my opinion. Do you have any sense of like would he take the qualifying offer?
It doesn't seem like that's what he wants to do, right? Like, because it's easy to say, or it's easy to threaten a team with, hey, if you're not going to pay me and give me real years, then I'll take the qualifying offer. But if you think about it from Quentin Grimes' perspective, you say, okay, well, that gives me the chance to get into free agency sooner. But also, your opportunities will not be anywhere near the same this year
He's
as
in a
they
tough
were
spot.
at the
Yeah.
end of last year. Number one, you're going to assume that Paul George and Joel Embiid have, even if it's slightly healthier years. So that's two guys that are going to soak up touches and time. They just drafted VJ Edgecombe with a number 3 pick. So he's going to get a lot of time. We've already seen him playing point guard and having the ball in his hands. And so that moves, anybody off the ball, but it'll move Grimes off the ball some more. And McCain was out for the year by the time he got here. So he's also competing with him for touches and minutes. So like
So the qualifying offer, you're right. I mean, it doesn't
it's
make sense. He's probably not going to have. He's again, if the Sixers stay healthy, he's not going to have that runway that he had at the end of the
yeah,
year when they're playing nonsense ball. And he played great while
played
the team
really
was
well,
playing
really well.
nonsense ball. But again, that's part of why he blew up is that the opportunity was there.
Yeah. So you look at it and you say, that's why I would find it unlikely that he'd be willing to take that risk. He clearly had a difference in valuation between himself and the Dallas Mavericks a year prior. They were trying to get him on a, maybe a 3-year, 4-year deal themselves before the season. That didn't work out. So this has been a bit of a theme with him. But like, look, you only get to go into free agency with some leverage so many times in your career, right? So I get it. This will probably play out the rest of this month, maybe into August, and we'll see what happens, which is, that'll be fun covering a free agency that goes deep into the summer.
I'm trying to think the last time the Sixers had like real business to do that went all the way in
right.
August.
This isn't a minimum guy that you're just kind of putting in at the end of the roster. This is a likely starter and like a heavy minute type player.
Yeah, I believe they signed Yabu in August and they signed Kelly in September. But those were, yeah, you're right. Those were minimum players. Those were, oh, that's a pleasant surprise that they were
Yep.
able to get those guys. This is different. This is a guy who is basically the focus of their offseason business at this point, and it could go deep. Yeah, not a lot of stuff that dragged in August. I think they hired Brett Brown way back when in August. I remember
That's
that.
right. That was a
dragged
later
on.
one.
Again, we're talking about teams on now. Maybe the Sixers are bad again this year, but two different timelines. Sam Hinkie was really taking his time that first year. Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, this is not uncommon. Like when there is restricted free agency and there is an impasse, sometimes this does take a lot of the summer. Like I remember J.R. Smith with the Cavs took forever.
That's right.
It took until September. So it's not without precedent. And again, I feel a little bit for Quentin Grimes. We've talked about this a lot. It's just a rough time to be a pretty good player in the NBA who's a free agent, a restricted free agent. They're just this summer in particular, there was not a lot of space out there. But you're right. He has limited options. The Sixers are going to pay him real money too. This is not a minimum situation. Like he will make over $15 million per year. It just the details are going to be important. But like you said, like if he were to bet on himself, this is not a good spot to bet on himself. And we'll talk about that a little bit with the 3-guard lineups as well, because this roster right now, guys, it does not make a ton of sense. It's okay. I'm not even being like mean about that. I'm just saying it's not making a ton of sense. But I guess before we get to our first break, the thing that Daryl Morey talked about where, we wondered after Yabu's comments where he was basically like, they didn't really make me an offer.
Yeah.
And Daryl Morey seemed to push back on that a little bit where he was like, we did make you an offer, but the Quentin Grimes part of this did hold us up in that.
Yeah. I understand both parties here, right? The Sixers rightfully said, we can't risk at the very start of free agency if they give him the taxpayer mid-level, right? That then caps them of what they can. They're hard capped at that point. And so if there was a team like Brooklyn, if there was a team like Detroit, if maybe Utah was making a bunch of like financial moves, right, to start the offseason, if a team like that, Danny Ainge has already in the past summer thrown an offer sheet at Paul Reed, for example. if he had just decided, hey, I'm going to offer a ton of money to Quentin Grimes, then you don't even have the ability to match it legally, right? And so they wanted Yabu back. Daryl straight up said that it sucked. That was his exact phrasing asked about losing Yabusele was, yeah, that sucked,
Yeah.
right? And so this was the team wanted Yabusele back. Now they had a pretty good indication that it was going to be a tough battle. We reported multiple times prior to free agency even opening that the Knicks, the Timberwolves, the Spurs, and maybe one or two other teams were all in the mix there. But to get back to the the time sensitivity of these things, as we were talking about with Kelly Oubre, I think Yabusele has come out and said like he had a few hours to make a decision, or the Knicks were basically saying, "Hey, look, we want you,
But
but
we're
we're
gonna
going to
go
have to
elsewhere.
move
Yeah.
on." Like that's how free agency works for a lot of these guys. Either you have to get in early, or you might just watch those opportunities vanish right before your eyes. So Yabu was not willing to wait. I understand that. You go secure the pretty good deal that he got to go play for the Knicks on another, good team that's got high expectations instead of saying, I'll risk it and see exactly what Quentin Grimes gets, and maybe I'll come back to Philadelphia. But at that point, then the Sixers have leverage over him, and they can go to him and say, you know what? Maybe we'll give you another minimum deal instead of what you thought you were worth. So it's a really unfortunate thing, and I think you could argue it made the team worse pretty easily by losing out on him. But they believe that Grimes is worth enough to deal with that short term pain.
I think what Derek has kind of hammered home too about this on recent pods, where it's like Grimes becomes tradable on that $15 to $17 million
Yes,
contract, and having decent mid tier salary is something that the Sixers do not have right now.
100%.
And I think we all believe that, regardless if you're not the biggest Quentin Grimes fan in the world, like I think he's going to be pretty tradable on that contract. He does have a skill set that a lot of teams can use. A lot of teams already have used. By the way, I do think it's underrated. When I was looking around at the potential, the boogeyman, the teams that could offer Quentin Grimes that money. You mentioned Danny Ainge. It is funny that Detroit felt like a perfect fit for Quentin Grimes, but because he had such a bad experience there a couple years ago,
they traded him quickly. They were
they
like, get him out.
they just were like, no way, like, yeah, we're not going to deal with this. So they moved on to Duncan Robinson. But yeah, I agree with Morey. It does suck in that I think I'm on the same wavelength as you and just listening to you a lot. Where Yabu, the more I watched him play this year, the less enthused I got about him. Now
100%.
I love him, and you can speak more to this than I can. Like, love the guy. Just seemed like a breath of fresh air. Like honestly, just the energy that he played with all year on a team that had so much bad stuff happen around him. So like all the respect in the world for him. As a player, though, a little bit of a tough fit in terms of
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what position he defends. But to Maury's point, it sucks. Like on a $6 million contract, like he is definitely worth that. Like
Yeah.
he definitely has the skill level of that level of player. So that does stink, and especially on a team that does not really have a power forward right now. We'll get to that in a sec. Where I feel like some of their two-way guys have a better chance of starting
Oh,
than like guys 11 through 15 on the roster.
yeah. I think it stings not because Yabu is like this franchise altering player, but because there were some people who in, January or whatever, are like, they're going to lose him because he's going to get the full mid level from somebody
And he
like
didn't get that.
the $14 million. That didn't come close to that, right? So I think when you end up getting them at the number that New York did, that's what makes it sting because they just really there is no guy that is stepping in that's like an obviously starting caliber forward. We're going to talk about Jabari Walker and Dominic Barlow and Trendon Watford and kind of what the vision is for those guys. But even though I have big concerns about Yabu as a starting caliber player, certainly, but also just like a playoff guy. Like if we don't know who you can defend, and a lot of what you're doing is just spot up, pick and pop shooting, and you're not going to get to do that playing next to Joel Embiid quite often. It makes it tough to be like, oh wow, they really missed out on him, but it's just one less decent basketball player on the team.
I think New York is a decent fit for Yabu because if you're going to play him, I think offensively, he's the best as a stretch five. Like, he's awesome at that. Like, he
Yeah.
clearly, if you have to guard him with a slow plotting center, he proved that he can make threes this year. And if you go out too far, he'll pump fake and then dunk on you. And he's got some skill in the short roll. That is his best spot. Now, at the five defensively, he's not very good.
Yep.
You would want him to play for a team that has wings and guards that can guard, and the Knicks they're pretty good in that regard. They're better than most teams with McHale, with OG in particular, Josh Hart, all those guys. So we'll see. The bummer for Yabu for me is that I just wish I got to see him play with Joel a little bit more, right?
Wish I got to see everyone play with Joel a little bit more, but yes, I agree.
Because I don't know if he's a 4 either, but if you're playing with Joel Embiid and you're shooting the ball like that, he also could have made it work. Now, maybe it could have been the inverse where, okay, Yabu's foot speed at the 4 is not really there. But if you got the big fellow cleaning up on the back end, you might be able to deal with that. So bummer that Yabu is gone. I don't think like the Sixers, it's not like the biggest make or break deal for this franchise. But like, let's be real. Like he would have played a lot for these guys. He plays a position of need for them. Okay. Let's take a break and hear from a few of our friends. And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about what Kyle and Derek and Devon heard from VJ Edgecombe, Tyrese Maxey, and Jared McCain as well.
Guys, I got to tell you about our great friends at Golden Nugget Jewelers, because for the past 30 years, Golden Nugget has operated out of the very same location in the heart of Philadelphia. They get customers from everywhere: Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Baltimore, New York City. They come to Golden Nugget because they're getting the perfect engagement ring or wedding band from people who know their stuff and are providing a personalized shopping experience. I've said it before on the show. Shopping for an engagement ring is a stressful, chaotic, you don't know what you're doing for the most part, because I would hope many of you have never done it before. That's you're really enjoying this process in some way. Golden Nugget takes all the stress away, all the overthinking. That they will get you exactly what you want and what you need. They'll get you a great price on it. And maybe you're in the business, you're looking for something else. How about some high-end watches, fashion jewelry, diamond necklaces, bracelets, earrings, and more? They have it all. You can also receive a final cleaning and written appraisal with every engagement ring purchase. Golden Nugget Jewelers has been family-owned and operated since 1987. Chestnut and 8th in downtown Philadelphia. You deserve an expert in the best price. Golden Nugget Jewelers, where Philly gets engaged. Visit goldennuggetjewelry.com today to learn more.
All right, so I walked into my garage yesterday and it felt like a sauna.
I got to tell you, Devon, this Philadelphia heat, especially coming off a cool period, no joke.
All right, so here's what I did. I got like 10 bags of ice and I made myself an ice bath to stay cool instead of turning on the AC.
But why wouldn't you just turn on your air conditioning?
Well, I was trying to be energy efficient. Go green, go birds, right? And a little power dribble. Make sure I stay away from it.
Yeah, but, instead of icing yourself out, you could just check out Pico's energy saving rebates. They've got deals on Energy Star cooling equipment that actually work, and they cut down your bills.
Hold on. So no more ice?
Unless it's an ice cold beer, Devon, we don't need to talk about ice.
That makes a lot of sense.
So everybody just head to pico.com/ways to save. They've got tips for everything: heating, cooling, lighting, you name it. Don't resort to ice like my friend Devon over here. Look at that. Okay. Teleported in just to talk about Pico. Thank you, Devon Gibbons.
Devon made his flight. Thank you for doing the ad read and just leaving the hoops talk to us. He'll be back tomorrow.
Perfect.
And welcome back.
Greeny Green says, give these guys an Oscar.
Welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
To the PHLY Sixers podcast presented by Rothman Orthopedics. We are talking about Devon and Derek and Kyle, what they saw in Las Vegas, particularly from Daryl Morey and some of the younger players, not the ones who were on the court. We're kind of trying to avoid some of the summer league.
Yeah, really.
VJ, by the way, whatever it is, whatever, if it's your thumb, if it's your wrist, if it's your foot, I don't care what it is. Can you get on the court, man? Can you give team content just a little bit? Because you played really well in that first game. I was very impressed, man. And I cannot believe what a floor raiser you have become in just 5 minutes on this.
Oh,
in
unbelievable.
this
Because I
franchise.
mean, watchability, team cohesion, just like everything, right? But and like let's set aside our desire to have a watchable product and to see VJ out there. These are also just some important reps for him where they can throw him out there, put the ball in his hands for, 30 minutes or whatever it is, and say, you're the point guard of this team and you're going to run things, which that's not going to be the case often, I think, with the big club, right? So these are reps that while he'll get some of them playing alongside Maxey and Joel and Paul and Jared and everyone else, this is his show if he's playing in these games. So that to me, like whether he plays well or not, I just thought this was an important proving ground to say, yeah, go show me what you've done with your handles. Show me what you've done to work on the pull-up shooting. And we've already seen some interesting flashes just in one game. So please give me more of it. Go out there against Trey Johnson tomorrow night and beat him for a third time after beating him twice in high school.
What did he shoot? 27 shots? VJ, let's get 37 shots in that game. Come
As
on.
many shots as you want, brother.
Let's see it. I was really impressed, man. And it's funny that we were talking about his question marks and like, look, the reason why he was not considered a slam dunk number 3 pick. I would have picked him. I know you guys had him in the same tier where he would have gotten picked, so you didn't think it was a crazy pick by any means.
No.
But why he wasn't a slam dunk pick was his ball handling, and it's like, is he going to have the on ball juice to be, even if not just a star, but like a guy who can run pick and rolls? And it's so funny that was his question mark. And this Sixers summer league team is just so poor at the guard position in terms of getting guys who not only get their teammates good shots, but also just anybody who can get them into their offense, where now VJ Edgecombe's weakness is now it's a disaster because he's not allowed to put his weakness on display. So yeah, I was very impressed with him in that first game. Like, we talk about the handle, like some of it is just NBA spacing, man. Like his handle, I think he can leverage his athleticism.
Yes.
Where, I'm sure he's made, he's put in a bunch of work on his handle, but some of it is just like, there's more space to roam around. And he's not in as many tight spaces as he was in college, and he can get to his spots with that extra space because
100%.
he's such a freaky athlete. So I thought that was a very good sign. I hope it's not the only sign we get in summer league. So let's talk about what Daryl Morey said, but also you talked to all 3 of those guys, right?
Yep.
All 3 of the young guys. We talked about Yabu in the last segment, where the Sixers guys, they just have this weird team right now where you look at a guy like Jabari Walker, and I'm thinking like, he signed a 2-way, and I was surprised he signed a 2-way.
Just about everybody seems to be, including people in Portland, who I had 2 or 3 people reach out almost immediately after that went official, and were like, "Wait, he signed a 2-way?" Like that. It was unexpected for a lot of people because, and look, I don't want to overstate who Jabari Walker is, right? Like at most he was going to be like, he'll get a minimum somewhere and he'll be kind of in that Trendon Watford category of like, hey, he's an interesting young player, but certainly not someone you're building the team around. But it does seem like that's how they used 2 of these 2-ways, right? Like Barlow and Walker are both guys with 3 years of NBA experience. They're still young. They have a definable skill set, mostly rebounding, right? They're big guys who can get after the ball. Already saw Barlow a little bit in summer league. So yeah, it seems like frankly they must have pitched these roster spots or these 2-way spots to Barlow and Walker as basically full roster spots. And I think Morey talked about this a little bit last Friday, said, part of it is they have had some success where guys are, whether it was undrafted players or players that they put on 2-ways, eventually went on to sign standard NBA deals, right? So Justin Edwards, Ricky Council, Paul Reed, like they've had a lot of guys come through here that were maybe afterthoughts in terms of where they were taken or they're undrafted players, and they were able to provide them with opportunity to come in. And then so you combine that with the fact that there is a glaring hole at power forward.
They're utilizing their crappy roster,
Yeah.
basically.
So like, look,
It's an
obviously
opportunity.
if you're Jabari Walker or Dominic Barlow, you prefer to have a standard deal and a full contract. But if those opportunities were limited, this was among the best two-way situations that you could probably think of, right? Because this could be a situation based on where the roster is that one of those guys could be playing in the rotation like night one this year.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a crazy thing to think.
Well, and they were able to sell their weak spot on their roster as like, okay, yeah, our power forward spot is kind of a disaster right now. But when you are, it's the same thing you see sometimes with the buyout market when all of these guys can join any team. And now some of them are ring chasers and they're just trying to win a title. Other guys, like I remember in 2019, a lot of people thought the Sixers were going to be able to sign Wes Matthews.
Yes.
He was the big buyout guy. And Wes Matthews did not choose the Sixers, and he did not choose a team that had any chance. The Indiana Pacers had a glaring hole at shooting guard that year. I think that probably Oladipo got hurt. I don't remember exactly.
I don't remember the circumstances.
I don't remember whatever. But
that.
he could start and play for a team that was just dead on arrival in the first round. But he was like, look, I want to be able to play as much as I can. And Indiana gives me the best chance possible. And I'm sure he thought, they'll help me get the best contract possible the next year. So the Sixers are doing that in a way with Jabari Walker, where they're like, all right, like our power forward situation's pretty bad, and we're going to sign you to a 2-way contract. But man, you might start for us at one point if you come in and
Which
kill it.
is just crazy.
So yeah, it's not the best situation for the Sixers, but it is in a weird way a selling point for Jabari Walker. So we talked about that. Power forward position, not great.
No.
But they do have this weird thing where if let's assume Quentin Grimes is back at some point, even if it's begrudgingly here, it's not a talentless roster, and that they have 4 pretty young guards, 3 super young guards. I guess Maxey's been around for a little bit, but he came into the league young. But how old is Grimes?
Grimes is 24, if I remember correctly.
Okay, so all of these guys are very young. Now, the question is, it becomes like, all right, when you don't have a lot of power forwards on this roster, we'll see what happens with Joel. We'll put that one to the side for today. What do they do? Like, what does the competition look like when you have Tyrese Maxey, who's, an all-star in this league and has proven that, he deserves his 35 minutes a game. Frankly, like they've played him too much sometimes over the past few years. Like, let's scale Tyrese's minutes back, but obviously he's going to play as much as he can. You have Jared McCain, who it's this weird situation where he's still a little bit of an unknown, but man, that little taste he gave us last year, that was a very interesting 20 or so games he gave us. And if he continues to play like that, like he's going to demand a lot of minutes. VJ Edgecombe, like we will see, like he will not get the same role he had in summer league. Like you just mentioned that, where, okay, we want him to take 30 shots a game now because he's not going to get that role during the season. That said, he has a lot of the skills that it feels like he'll be able to slot in nicely as a player who plays off the ball, a role player, a guy who, VJ, just go get some offensive rebounds for us. Just go guard the other team's best player. Go push the ball in transition. Make a 3 on the other side. But you also have Quentin Grimes, who, even if
we assume anyway.
Yeah, you're right. We assume. Even if he's not going to have that role during the nonsense ball at the end of last year, like he is a guy who fits in nicely with this team, right?
Yes.
He might be able to guard up. Maybe he'll be able to play in some 3-guard lineups. So I guess the first question is, it's not even a question. Just please tell me Kyle Lowry and Eric Gordon will never see
It certainly sounds like, now Daryl didn't directly address this, but it certainly sounds like Eric Gordon and Kyle Lowry are not being considered as we'll call the essential members of the rotation. I
don't want to hear that from Daryl Morey. I want to hear that from Nick Nurse. That's who I want to hear that from.
I tend to think that the young guys who are good will play more than the old guys who are no longer good.
Hope so.
So this whole guard conundrum was basically the biggest thing I wanted to talk to people about in Vegas in general, right? The whole idea of this team, how is it going to work? How are these guys going to fit together, right? There are a lot of good individual combinations. I think VJ can play with just about any of these guys because of the 2-way ability. McCain and Maxey are the trickier one, where they're both a little smaller and they have some defensive question marks to work out. Yeah. Grimes is more in the VJ category, but I think some people say, well, maybe he can scale up and play some 3. And like, I don't really love that for him. I do think he's better as a pure backcourt defender. offensively, fine, right? Because as many, and Daryl talked about this in Las Vegas, where he basically said, look, Nick having as many guys who can dribble, pass, shoot, make decisions, like that will take so much stress off of each individual player. It will make the offense go. The fact that you're not like, hey, Tyrese, let's run you through 100 screens and run a pick and roll for you every time or run the same dribble handoff. It can be, hey, Joel's got the ball at the nail. He gets doubled. Whoever gets it kicked to them on the weak side is not just a shooter that has to be respected, but a guy who can get to the rim, a guy who can make good decisions. Like, I do think that is such an upgrade over where they were a year ago, or last season, I should say. That's a big part of the calculus here. The other thing, though, is less about, how does it work on the court? How do these guys fit? And more about, how will all these guys handle it,
Yeah.
right? Like, because Maxey, it's less of a concern because
He's gonna play.
he's the guy.
Yeah.
He's going to play. He's on a max. Like, he will start. He will close. But even he, like, I think he has the presence of mind. And I asked him about this. Like, how do you keep everybody in the boat, so to speak? And his thing was like, look, last year was really tough. And we all need to be bought in, right? Like, when he said, if you look back at training camp, when everyone first saw Jared McCain, it was like, man, this kid is like the best player in training camp. He said that fire that Jared brought, where he basically came in and was like, I don't care that I'm a rookie. I don't care that there's a max contract point guard. I'm coming in to compete and take people's jobs. And he said that helped, that's pushing everybody forward. And so that mentality just has to apply to all of them, right? Whether you're Tyrese, VJ, Jared, Quentin, like, you're going to have to compete for minutes. That doesn't mean you're fighting with your teammate. It just, you got to go out there and play your butt off, or nothing's going to be handed to you. And all of them seem to have the right perspective about it. I think it helps that VJ and Jared, I didn't even realize had a pre-existing relationship. VJ talked about, or Jared talked about, he was actually the guy who took VJ through his visit to Duke. He made an official college visit there.
Didn't work out.
Showed him a good time, according to Jared, but it didn't end up working out. So luckily, there's no
by the way,
bitterness
that's not
there.
Jared's fault. The NIL wasn't correct, I'm sure.
But here's my thing, man. Can
Baylor,
you
man.
imagine if you had added Edgecombe to that Duke team, him playing off of Cooper Flag and Knipple and Malawach, how good they would have been?
Well,
they were already great.
I'll tell you right now. I mean, VJ Edgecombe was the number 3 pick. There's no way he drops any further than the number 3 pick, because I think that we talked about this a lot over the last month leading into the draft. Like, that Duke team, that was rare, the spacing and the offensive system that they had. And, I think Cooper Flag deserves a ton of credit, but it's not just him. It was all the other guys. It was Knipple. It was Malawach with his vertical spacing, like all of those guys. That was a professional offense on the college level.
Yes.
And VJ did not play in that. VJ played in a normal college offense, which is to say messy and multiple guys who wanted to be ball handlers.
Playing with Roach, who's just dribbling the air out of the ball. Robert Wright was nowhere near as good as I think his recruiting rankings would have suggested he would be. Yeah, it was not a great situation.
Not great shooting. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's what a lot of college players have to deal with. So yeah, I mean, that would have been pretty cool. So you mentioned, when you have Maxey, McCain, and Edgecombe, like, again, like they feel like the same guy in a lot of ways, because they're these incredibly hard workers. They seem like very nice kids too. Young men at this point with Tyrese Maxey. We've seen him grow up, like people that you want in your building and you want on your team. So I am going to be curious, particularly like McCain, what that looks like in the next year. But the guy that I'm a little worried about is Grimes. And not because I think Quentin Grimes is a bad guy, but if there are some rough feelings after this whole restricted free agency dance, we'll see. That might be the one guy where it's like, I'm not sure he's necessarily a part of that group. I don't know.
It has a little bit been the book on it. I do think that's why he has bounced around a little bit, that maybe there's an undercurrent of, while he's been, I guess, publicly facing okay with being more of that 3-and-D, like play point of attack defense, hit spot up shots, attack the occasional closeout. Like, I think there has been a desire for him to have more and get more opportunities. And I think some teams have just said, that's not what we want you to do. And so there's a little bit of friction there. And so if he comes back here, and I think it's still much more likely than not, he has to look at the landscape and understand, like, this is not going to be February and March ball, right? As you said, the nonsense ball that they were playing at the end of last year.
Not his fault. It was nonsense ball.
It absolutely wasn't. And I don't
but he took advantage of it.
I don't take anything away from like the craft and the skill he showed. It's just a matter of like, look, buddy, it's one thing to do that when you're getting your doors blown off as a team every night. It's another thing to do it as one of the featured players on a real team that's trying to win something. So he would be the wild card. So one of my big takeaways as we're going through all this was, I honestly think I wasn't even really expecting to see Jared McCain much while we were out in Las Vegas. Like, I figured he'd be more in the, you've been to Vegas Summer League, when the veterans come in and it's like, they might see a game or two, and
they're posing
they're
around
for the
cameras,
and then they're at like the Wynn at a nightclub they're not really. Jared was a constant fixture at like all the Sixers events that we were at practices, shoot-around.
Right?
Well, no. So he was in practice gear, but not going through the same drills. Like, he is out there. I wonder if there's maybe some workouts going on just like after team sessions are done. But he, despite the fact that he's not actually going through this stuff all the way with them, he's still out there and like being a teammate, right? And we saw him pretty constantly with VJ Edgecombe. Like, a lot of times we're seeing them with their arms around one another, just like talking through things.
It's great.
I wrote in a story at ALLPHLY.com over the weekend that there was a post-practice like form shooting drill that Edgecombe was going through with Rico Hines. And Jared was just there for the start of it, rebounding a little bit. He was like, hey, I'll stand under the basket and I'll tap these shots out to you as you're working on this. So just like being a teammate, right? Like almost acting as like he's still the rookie serving a vet. And I think that that's the mentality that it's going to take for these guys to look at games and say, hey, I'm not closing tonight, but I'm not going to get bent out of shape. I'm not going to take it out on, if it's VJ over Jared, I'm not going to take it out on Jared, or vice versa. Like, they seem to have the right mentality going in. But you know as well as I do, let's talk in January after there's been some time going by and guys are saying, hey, I was the number 3 overall pick, or hey, me, Jared McCain, I was one of the best stories of the season last year, and now I'm getting bumped out for another guard. So it's a wait and see thing, but I think the seeds have been planted for these guys to start off on the right foot, which that's always very important.
And it also feels like, right before we go to break here, is that like, look, it's okay that the roster it doesn't make 100% sense. Like, when you have the season that the Sixers had last year and they say, like, look, we're just going to draft VJ Edgecombe because we think he's the best guy.
Yep.
And yes, is there a bit of a glut at the guard position? Yes. And they're also saying, hey, look, we're going to re-sign Quentin Grimes because he's clearly our best free agent and it makes the most sense for us in the long run. I think that's okay. There's probably a sense of, at some point there might be a trade here, right? They might, decide that a couple of these guys fit really well together. Maybe one or two of these guys don't fit quite as well, or maybe one or two of these guys are killing it on bench units where their value jumps up for other teams, right? Because they can take more of the ball. I think that is absolutely fine. But I also think it's fine for the Sixers to say, let's see them all play together in different combinations at the beginning of the season. Let's see how it looks and then make some decisions from there. So I am okay with that, even if I do expect some bumps in the road along the way. Okay, let's take a break, and Kyle and I will talk a little bit more about that. He had a very funny / depressing paragraph in his piece that I want to tell him about. But first, let's hear from a few of our friends.
Guys, I got to tell you, I made a grave mistake going out to Las Vegas. I knew it was going to be hot. I knew the sweat was going to be flowing. And I forgot to bring my Mando. And boy,
oh no,
a lot of regrets, because Mando helps you prepare for the summer heat, summer activities. Certainly in Las Vegas, it does not get more summer than July in Las Vegas. It's 108 degrees. It's 110 degrees. You want to stay fresh, right? You want to be as fresh as is humanly possible. And I blew it, right? I'm sweating through shirts. It's not a pretty scene, right? You walk into the Thomas and Mack Center and it's like, I got to meet all these people I haven't seen in a while. And now I'm thinking about, boy, I'm lifting my armpits up, but also everywhere else, right? We tell you all the time, Mando covers all the more colorful parts of men's bodies. So like the pits, but also the belly buttons, the butt crack, the grundle. Rich opted out of this, so he didn't have to say the word grundle. I'll do it. And all their scents are geared toward men with options like bourbon leather, Clover Woods, Mount Fuji, and Pro Sport. It's whole body deodorant. It's safe to use anywhere on your body, even your feet. I don't know if I've ever thought of putting deodorant on my feet, but now you can try it because of Mando. It is clinically proven to block odor all day and control odor for up to 72 hours. You can get a Mando starter pack, which is perfect for new customers. Comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like the mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. Use the code PHLY at shopmando.com. You get a special offer for listeners. New customers get 20% off site-wide with that exclusive code at shopmando.com. Free for shipping as well. Can't beat that. Please support our show. Tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando.
Kind of blowing up my spot on us divvying up the ad reads. Okay, let's talk about our friends at Empire Today, guys. Empire Today, just like your favorite team needs a home court advantage, your home needs a home floor advantage. And Empire Today can help you get it. Empire Today, they have flooring experts, dedicated flooring professionals who focus on flooring every single day. And guys, we've all been to those big box stores. You wander endless aisles, then somehow you're hauling all of the materials home, looking for an installer, and coordinating everything yourself. And those big box stores, they might have a flooring department, but that person who was helping you with the flooring could be stocking light bulbs tomorrow. They could be doing other things. Not Empire. They are the flooring experts, and that is why they are the best bet for a new floor. They live and breathe flooring, and they will be with you every step of the way. It is a whole different ball game with them. They bring the showroom right to your home, and with Empire Today, you get clear, upfront, and all-inclusive pricing. You can schedule installation as soon as the next day. Nobody likes to wait around for that stuff. So guys, what you need to do is schedule a free in-home estimate today, because some things are just better at home. PHLY listeners can receive a $350 discount when using promo code PHLY. Yes, you heard that right. A $350 discount with code PHLY. Restrictions apply. Visit EmpireToday.com/PHLY for full details. And welcome back to the PHLY Sixers podcast, presented by Rothman Orthopedics. I teased a line in Kyle's, not a line, a paragraph in Kyle's piece where he wrote about Jared McCain, VJ Edgecombe, and Tyrese Maxey, which is exactly what we're talking about, but it's a good piece with some insight from Daryl Morey and all three of those guys and kind of how this rotation is going to work this year. But man, I got to tell you, I got hung up on this paragraph, and you were literally just trying to provide some context. It really had nothing to do with any of those three guys. The main point you were trying to make is that Tyrese Maxey has seen some stuff in his time.
Oh, okay. Now I know what you're referring to.
So I'm going to read this verbatim, and it's unbelievable. I mean, again, I was present for a lot of this stuff. I was actually there when Doc Rivers lied about this thing. So let me just read it. It's unbelievable. So Kyle wrote, Maxey has a fair bit of experience navigating what we'll call interesting locker room situations. He was a second-year player thrust into a starting role when Ben Simmons requested a trade. And I'm going to editorialize here. He's also at the same agency that was kind of handling that whole holdout, and he was kind of really tight with them, still is. He was forced to cover for Doc Rivers, who lied that he volunteered for a bench role. I was there for that as well.
Still insane.
Doc just coming out of nowhere in Los Angeles saying that. He watched backcourt partner James Harden, who, again, he learned a lot from, turn on trusted ally Daryl Morey after a decade of mutual love, and he stood alone and absorbed every bullet last season when Philly's 2 veteran stars spent most of this season hurt or playing poorly. I think you were just trying to provide some context for everybody
Yes.
and that he's seen some stuff. But man, as somebody who was there for a lot of that and saw a lot of that up close, it's just like, man, what a crazy, like he's like he's the meme of the is it the Tropic Thunder guy with the
Oh,
yeah.
I think it's Tropic
He's just seen a lot of stuff go on.
And like sometimes I just think it's helpful to contextualize this organization by just write things as they happen. You don't have to make things up. You don't have to distort it. Just say exactly what happened and you put it in sequential order and say, boy, this team has been something for quite a long time, right? It's like you can do it with Joel, right? Because Joel's been here even longer. He dealt with the league basically shadow planting the Colangelo family here, and then you got the burner scandal and all that. So there's just so many ridiculous things that have happened. But the point of the paragraph in that story, and it's what I talked with Tyrese and some other guys about this weekend, was that I think he understands the value of all the stuff we don't see, right? All the times where you're in the gym together and it's about, pushing each other to be better rather than trying to pull somebody else down and focusing on the team goals and the team experience. And like he has been a good soldier, a willing soldier throughout his career, right? Certainly as a rookie where he didn't know if he was going to play or not night to night, but whether it was as a sixth man or he's as a starter, then he just gets thrown into this role as a starter with Ben out and really never looks back. But he's been the guy who adjusts to everyone else. And now he's at the point of his career where it's more other people need to fit with him, right? He has become a big enough name and star in the league that it's not like, hey, Tyrese has to figure out how to play with Ben Simmons. This is Jared McCain and VJ Edgecombe and Quentin Grimes need to benefit Tyrese Maxey and open up the game for Tyrese Maxey.
In this 4-guard concoction.
Yes.
He's the alpha dog. He's out in front.
By far. But to his credit, he still looks at it from a team perspective, right? It's we need each other.
Yeah.
This is not as simple as like you give Tyrese the ball and he plays 40 minutes and he just tries to score as many points as he can. He needs to get put off the ball more. You need to tap into the off-ball shooting. You got to, frankly, get him some rest that he was never really able to get for the portion of the season that he was healthy for last year. So I just think everything that you're hearing from those guys is very healthy, competitive stuff. And then Daryl, when we talked to him the other day, essentially said, like, clearly we're going to play 3-guard lineups, right? Like they're going to try these multi-guard looks. And while I did not want to see basically any of those last year because that meant you're playing the Lowrys, the Reggie Jacksons, the guys who you don't want on the floor, this is an opportunity to say we have 3 real backcourt creators that we can go to and say, I feel good with the ball in his hands. And I feel good about what that guy can do off the ball, whether that's as a cutter, bring it like using their gravity to space the floor for the other guys. So I think they're very happy about that. I think they'd just be happier if they had a real starting power forward and somebody who could kind of fill the role that is missing right now.
I think so, especially too when I'm thinking of the combos that you could play together. I really want to see Maxey and McCain play together, but I feel like if you do that, like you got to be big at the 3 and the 4. Like Maxey, McCain, and either one of Grimes and Edgecombe. Like I'm sure we'll see it at some point, and I would support seeing it, right? Because you like let's go on a fact finding mission here. Let's try and see how all of these combinations work. But I think ideally, let's say those guys turn into just this amazing shooting and fast backcourt. You're probably going to need to be big at the 3 and 4. So that is one of the combinations I want to see. Just those 2 and with anybody, right? And probably Joel and maybe PG and then a normal size power forward. That would be nice. The other combination I would like to see is either one of those guys with Edgecombe and with Grimes, because then I think you can compete defensively a little bit more. You can be a little bit more athletic. I mean, VJ, like, look, I thought he didn't make many catch and shoot threes in that game in Utah, but he looked very confident taking them. That's
big
something.
focus of his offseason workouts, and like he is well aware of what are the points of my game that need improvement, both for his own growth and also just for how am I going to get on the floor sooner than later.
I don't want to extrapolate too much from one game, but it seemed like to me he's much more comfortable taking pull-up twos at this point. The pull-up threes have not come. And by the way, the pull-up threes, that's the shot that any amazing lead guard needs.
It's the star shot.
It's the shot that, frankly, Tyrese Maxey still needs to get a little bit better at. He's much better as now. He has it. Don't get me wrong. Like if you go under the screen on him, he's going to make you pay. But still, if he can make that at an even higher level, I think that opens up his game more. He's been better as a catch and shoot and dribble handoff guy. So VJ right now, I was very impressed with some of his footwork, but those were mid-rangers. Those were even some pretty short twos, some like almost fadeaways and floater range. But off the catch, I thought he looked pretty comfortable. He didn't make many of those shots.
And I feel very good about him as a long-term catch and shoot guy. Yeah. It is the other stuff that I'm like, if he's not reaching a star ceiling, it's because of that. It's the lack of pull-up threes. Now, I also, frankly, he didn't shoot many pull-up twos at Baylor. So the fact that he came out in game one and is just, firing away, that to me was very encouraging because that was just, it was different than how he played in college. And so then you can look back at his college tape and say, well, some of this is probably just Baylor didn't allow him to play this way, whether that was teammates or structure or whatever. And it makes you look back at the Bahamas games where he was, really leaping off the screen and saying, maybe this is closer to his level. Like this is more, you see the flashes, you see the upside. Maybe this tells us more than a lot of the Baylor games did.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
No, I that was my first thought. I mean, Derek had the stat, right? He had, I think, 12 pull-up jumpers his entire season at Baylor, and he made 5 the other night, and he looked good doing them too. So, VJ, it's one game, and maybe I'm reading a little bit too much into it, but I don't think so. I thought he looked very good in that game. It was a very encouraging start for him. Hopefully we see another game from him. Is there anything else? I mean, I got to say, I'm a little disappointed in the Justin Edwards and Adem Bonas of the world. It's not just their fault.
Probably less so, but Edwards has been pretty brutal so far.
Their guard play is rough, and that is the main reason that they are struggling. Like, I think if VJ had played in all of these games, I think they would have won a couple of these, like the game the other night, and they certainly would not have lost by 40 to the Spurs if VJ was.
We've watched a lot of summer league games between the two of us. That was one of the worst summer league performances I've ever seen. So
that was tough, and that's like, I've seen some bad summer league performances, but usually it's like the last game in Vegas when everybody's
not the opener.
Everybody's trying to get out of there. No, the opener, usually you have your best stuff available. So yeah, that was rough.
So the thing with Justin is he's not playing the role he's going to play for the Sixers. So in that way, it's not overly concerning.
Completely agree.
But I still would, like, in year 2, after he's gotten a ton of NBA reps, see more self-creation juice, right? Like just the ability to break more guys down off the dribble, not get ripped like every other time that he's going to the basket. That's the big thing that has jumped out to me is like guys are dislodging him constantly. And that's a thing that should be harder, even if the handle isn't great. He's just bigger and like has put on weight because you get in an NBA strength and conditioning program and you're dedicated to this, you're going to be bigger and stronger. So the fact that guys are moving him around and he's not able to get to his spots as often, that I think has been the biggest concern for me. We'll see if it matters at all. I tend to think it doesn't because they're not asking him to be, the self-creation wing. You're not a point forward. You're not really even a go-to scorer. If you hit spot up looks and you defend your man, that's all they really need him to do.
And that stuff has been good. He's just such an odd player in that when you look at his background, being one of like the best 5 players in his high school class, usually those guys are like, give me the ball. Like, wow, like let me cook. And the thing is, those guys, and I brought up on
And
Friday,
by the way, we're going to quick overtime for the show.
Overtime.
We normally have Devon to do this. Didn't want to miss our time today. So join us at allphly.com if you're watching on Fast.
I appreciate you getting that in.
Listen, look, somebody's got to
lost track of time and score there. I lost track of the clock. I brought up Jahlil Okafor the other day, and it's like he was another top 5 recruit, and he was probably better at his high school strengths and college strengths in the pros than Justin Edwards is. But his issue was he wasn't good enough at scoring. He didn't command double teams. He didn't like play above the rim, didn't shoot threes. And he was so terrible at all of the role player stuffs. And we've
Yeah.
seen that story time and again, that these guys who are top recruits, and sometimes they're shoot first point guards, they're not good enough to do what they did at the high school and the college level in the NBA, but they're also not good at the role player stuff as well. Justin Edwards is weird to me, and this is probably bodes well for his career. He's not good at the star stuff at all, but he's really bought into the role player stuff. And frankly, like you mentioned,
It's part of why we enjoyed the Justin Edwards experience. He came in, and normally a rookie is just like, whatever. If I'm in the game, I got to get up shots whenever I can. And he showed like the exact amount of poise and just thoughtfulness about what he was doing that you wanted from him. So yeah, I would say I'm less concerned about him just because of the role.
he does all the role player stuff. Like he's
Yeah.
shooting, I think he's shooting 37% from the field, but he's also shooting 37% from three. And
Which is really all that I genuinely care about with
and he's
him.
taking the catch and shoot shots. Like for a guy who was not considered much of a shooter in the high school, like he was a scorer more than a shooter
Mhm.
in the high school and college levels. Like, man, he's got a very quick release on those shots. So he really seems to have bought into the role player stuff. But yeah, him not being able to scale up at all has been at least part of why they're a little bit of a tough watch in the
So,
summer league.
I'll go somewhere else as far as concerns go. I'll temper it, but Janai Broom not exactly blowing me away so far. I think the good news is that he has shot the ball pretty well.
Yep.
And that was, if he has any chance to play the 4, he has to make threes. And I think outside of, he did record scratch at the end of the Utah game.
Yeah.
He record scratched a corner 3, probably could have taken, but by and large has been a confident shooter the whole run they've been at summer league. And if he can hit a reasonable amount of threes, that's going to give him real utility and value for this team. Because some of it is like, I do think he looks small at times against the real bigs. I do think he has looked slow in space at times, but I also can see a little bit of the game's just moving really fast right now, and the jump in competition, you can tell he's just like a beat off and a step off. And I think over time that will normalize, and that I will give him some grace as a guy who's been super successful and productive at every level. But I have been concerned just watching, like, he'll get himself an opening and he does not have the sense of like that opening closes much quicker than you think it's going to. And then someone comes in and either they're blocking his shot or they're stepping in front of him or whatever it is. So I would like to see some better stuff from him. Admittedly, he's also not being put in like, it's not like they're giving him the ball in his money spots in the post and saying, go post somebody up and score. And so he's being asked to step outside of his comfort zone as well. So the fact that he's at least been able to hit shots is encouraging. I just wish I felt a bit better about all the other stuff.
I completely agree with you. You mentioned in your piece after one of the games, like he got the ball in the post. He was like 15 feet away from the hoop, and he just like rushes on a hook shot that like barely hit the rim. Like, and I'm just like, that's not what I want to see. So the thing with Broom though, I think we mentioned this on the night 2 of the draft when he got picked, is that he didn't really fit my backup center test where I'm like, what are you elite at? What are you? Like, are you a shooter? Are you a switch guy? Are you a pick and roll guy? Or are you a rim protector? I just didn't know what he was elite at. You mentioned that he has shot the ball well. I feel like the best stuff he has done is when he is facing the basket from the 3-point line.
Yep.
Like they're throwing the ball to him at the top for a delay set. He's picking and popping with VJ or one of their other guards. Like that stuff has looked better. That seems like that's his chance to be an NBA player.
Yeah.
Where because the post up stuff, the playing through him, that's not going to happen, I don't think, at the NBA level. Now, look, maybe he just completely turns it on when the regular season starts, but I didn't think that was going to be the case when they drafted him, and there is nothing I have seen in Utah and Vegas that have suggested like he's going to be an offensive hub on backup units.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll see. You never overreact to summer league unless it's a guy's if a guy's in year 3 and they struggle, that's the one time that you're like, this guy's probably cooked. So year 1 in summer league, even though Broom is older, like
He only
he gets plenty of grace.
He gets year 2. That's it.
He is older,
old
so
enough.
he doesn't get as much time as the normal guy. But
speaking of year 3, Jaden Springer, I think it's year 5 of summer league. I was stunned.
Yeah. Him, I mean, if you want to talk more about Sixers, Hood Scafino is boy.
Yeah, I'm
not my cup of tea.
Not my cup of tea, but I don't think he's going to be the Sixers' cup of tea, so I don't really have to.
I don't think so either.
Belabor that point.
I think he got a DNP the other day, or at least I don't know what happened to him. He was in the tunnel at the game, and then I never saw him again. So that was an interesting development.
Look, maybe they watched the other games. I don't know. So, I mean, sometimes
he was with Lester Quinones at the craps table somewhere.
Maybe, yeah, maybe. Okay, I think that's about it. I think that's most of what we need. Is there anything else from Morey that you wanted to get off your chest, or you want to save for tomorrow?
No, I think like honestly, the big takeaway from me is that I think they kind of feel how everyone else does. Like, I don't think they believe this is a complete roster.
No.
But I also think that Daryl has historically said, don't judge me by the team on July 14th. He wouldn't say that date, but don't judge me what the team looks like in October. It'll be what does it look like after the trade deadline. I do think that if you have aspirations to actually compete, I think it's a tough ask to say we're going to get like a 5th starter at a position of need at the deadline, and all of a sudden you're just going to take off and it's going to be gangbusters. Like, there are not lots of examples of that working out, but it's less troublesome than if you were trading for like a star, right?
Yeah.
You bring in, like, when they got James Harden in 22, there's just no way to reasonably contend for a title when one of your 2 best players is brought in mid-February or late January, whenever that was.
And they lost some depth pieces in making that trade.
It's just really hard. So I came away just encouraged generally by, the young core guys, right? That these guys all seem to be in the boat together. And that is really, we're going to talk tons about Joel and Paul and, the few older guys they frankly even have left. But one of the reasons I'm actually very excited for this next season is that even if those guys aren't healthy or they're just bad, we can start thinking about and looking at what does the future look like? What does VJ and Maxey look like? What does VJ and Jared look like? And go through these combinations and watch these guys take their lumps together. And like, they seem to have really, as you said, similar personalities, hardworking guys, want the right thing. So I'm very excited to see those guys on the floor together. I wish we could see at least one of those guys tomorrow and in Vegas before things wrap up out there.
Me too. I think it's not a finished roster at all. It's definitely mismatched with the depth they have on one end and the lack of depth that they have on the other end. But like you said, the depth that they have on one end, I like all those guys.
Yeah,
I like all those guys. I'm excited to watch them develop. I think they're going to hit whatever their high end outcomes are. We'll see how high they are, but excited to see that happen. I think we had one super chat
from our friend Marcus Blackstock, who says simply, "Where's Pumper?" B Pump of the Pump It Up segment. No, not here. Just like Ace Bailey also no showed in Las Vegas, which that was very funny. It was like Ace played like one more game than VJ in the Utah Summer League, so people were going crazy. And then I hope Ace Bailey's doing okay. But then I think he's got a hip flexor or some kind of strain, and he has not made an appearance yet. So Pumper has not had an opportunity to come in and crow about any new games, nor have any of our other pro Ace friends. I would say overall, my take coming away from Vegas was it really blows how few of these guys have played.
Yeah.
Like, Harper only played one game. Knipple only played one game. No VJ. Flag seems like he's sitting out. Like, they're just, come on, man. I want to see these guys play. I didn't go to Vegas to, like, no disrespect to these guys who are much better basketball players than I could ever aspire to be. But you don't want to watch G League guys. You want to see the guys who are like the top of the draft, the future of the league, that type of thing. So that's been a real bummer.
That high center of gravity that is on Ace Bailey is injured right now, and it's an injured center of gravity.
It has started already.
It has already started. Okay, before we finish up, I think this is your department, my friend.
The roll call,
do the world famous roll call.
I can't believe I even still have a voice after the last night in Vegas, but here we are. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with us today. Thank you to Terrence Knights. Thank you to Riaz, to Theo, to Val, to my girl Winona, who I do believe I forgot when we were at the Westgate the other day. So my apologies to Nona. Thank you to Marcus Blackstock with the super chat. Thank you,
Marcus.
Darkness in the building. We got Music Lover 31. We got Greeny Green. We got Charles. Mom's grandchildren who's still here, even though Devon is not. Hello to Mom. We love that. Thank you for the support as always. Eugene Ross. Who else we got? DC Marley. I'll shout out Pump. Pump it up.
Shout out to Pump It Up.
Shout out to Pump. He's not here, but he's here in spirit. Derek Bodner making an appearance in the chat today. I'm glad I haven't seen Devon or Bree in the chat because, boy, they had a nightmare travel day yesterday.
Probably both asleep right now.
And yeah, I said to them when I heard they landed, please get some sleep. You guys have earned it. And they were both working super hard out there in Las Vegas. Thank you to Phil Evans. Thank you to Money Marr. Thank you to our guy Al, the 2-minute warning. Thank you to B Knight, Jesse Bond, and all of our wonderful friends. On the way out, could you please hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you get notifications each and every time we go live, and hit the thumbs up button today, not just to help us out in the algorithm, but also to say thank you to Andrew for stepping into the producer's chair for us today. The cover for our president of basketball operations, Bree, while she recovers from a nightmare traveling back. We had a nightmare on the way out, nightmare on the way back. So thank you to Andrew for stepping in. We will be back tomorrow, but I think it might be a late show tomorrow. Ooh. I heard there's a 7 p.m. debut.
Prime time.
As part of a special theme week here at PHLY and across all city. So 7 p.m. premiere tomorrow. And oh, by the way, while you're here, make sure you check out, I believe we have one-on-ones up with Jared McCain, with VJ Edgecombe. There may be another one that we have kept under wraps for a little bit. An important interview that you might want to see that is not up yet, but keep an eye out for that on the YouTube channel. Until next time, goodbye, everyone. And thank you to Rich for stepping in. See you later.
See you guys.
We all silly like the mayor.